Next question. I am a Christian, but I'm also an ally, and oftentimes I feel unaccepted by other Christians, and I also feel unaccepted by the group I am trying to support. How do I follow my faith and be a strong ally when the two don't always agree? Perhaps Juanita would like to take that.
I think that one's mine. It's really, really a hard road to haul because, well, I'm going to go on a little side note here. I graduated in May. The vote came in August, and I had 7 interviews between that time. And 2 of the interviews, actually, I knew before I even walked out the door that they weren't ever even going to consider me because they wanted to know if I would help them walk their church out of the ELCA if that vote went through. And I think that's why I'm still doing interim ministry. So the problem is you need to go with your heart. If God is with you, God will see you through it. That's the best information I can give you. I know that there are people that will come up with all kinds of ideas why why gay people are not accepted. And I got, 7 different texts that people sent to me, and all of them talk about destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, the whole sanctity of sex, prostitution, but none of these talk about a loving union. None of these things talk about anything but abuse and violence, and I don't think that's at all what it is to be a Christian. So I think we need to stop and think about exactly what people are asking us to do and how can we really look at exactly what Jesus would do, because I don't think Jesus said any of these things that are in here. So.
Yeah, go ahead. It's yours.
I'd just like to say to that person who said, I'm a Christian and I'm an ally, thank you for identifying yourself as both. But think also how difficult it is for a lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender person to say, I'm a Christian. Think about how much they need your support. If you're afraid, how fearful do you think they are? Maybe that'll give you the courage to stand up for them. Because sometimes I find for myself, it is much easier to do the battle for someone else than it is for myself. So just give some thought to that.
Thank you. This might be something that could be addressed by several of you, any of you. What population is the most difficult to approach about GLBT issues? And I'm assuming that would be a hostile population. Is it a stumper?
Not particularly. In general, the marriage amendment, we have seen the opposition mostly made up of religious people. And I'm not just saying this. I mean, Proposition 8, 4 out of the $5 used to propel that campaign to get that amendment passed was funded by Mormon churches. So, and that's millions upon millions of dollars. So, I mean, it's definitely religious people that, and not all religious people, don't get me wrong there. There are some faiths that exclude gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgendered people, and I believe that they're very firm and strong in their faith because they have been raised that way their entire lives. It's what they've come to know, and it's really a long-term belief, and those are very hard to change, as with anything that you've grown up, become accustomed to. So I think that people of faith will perhaps be the hardest to sway, the hardest to impact.
I'm just going to follow up. If any of the panelists, are there, maybe Juanita again or someone, are there any strategies for addressing those particular difficult populations? Maybe even out front people.
I would just like to advocate for the people of faith groups that we have a huge following of people of faith groups at Out Front Minnesota, and I think Siobhan mentioned a statistic of 25% of the folks that are making up our supporters with this campaign. So I really want to caution bashing religious people, because I think there's a lot of people of faith that are really supportive of LGBT rights and identify themselves. But when we're talking about persuading people, I think, you know, you're always going to have your far left and your far right, and then you're going to have your movable middle. There's the people on the far right, you know, they're not going to change. They're firm in their stance, and that's just where we're going to let them be. But there are the people that maybe don't understand the issues, and like Siobhan said, haven't heard any stories. So that's why it's important to make sure to tell people their stories, because it's all about knowing somebody, you know. With any issue, if you think about an issue, if you know somebody who's dealt with it or you've dealt with it yourself, that's when your perspective opens and you change and you become aware and knowledgeable of the issues. So that's what it's all about. So that's what I would have to say to that.
Again, this could potentially be answered by any number of the panelists. Do you experience a difference in how gays and lesbian people are received by the straight community in rural versus urban communities? And how can we do better at welcoming all people in this community?
Kathy and I recently retired in 2002. Prior to that, we lived up in the cities, and one of the conversations we had before moving down to Marshall was, you know, are we going to stay open or are we going to creep back in the closet? Because of some concerns and because we weren't sure how welcoming the community here would be. My answer to Kathy at that time was, I don't know how to be any different than open. And so it was not really a question that needed an answer. What I have found is that by just simply sharing your personal story with individuals, you will find your allies. You will find people who will walk away, turn their back to you. Just let that be your guide. And that's within any community. I think the main difference between a larger community and a smaller community is that in a larger community, you can believe, and I say believe that you're being anonymous when you're truly not. Oftentimes, people identify you before you identify yourself. And so I think a lot of people who think that they're hiding in a closet truly are not hiding in any closet whatsoever. So you can't say enough about sharing your own personal experience, sharing your own stories, and latch on to those people that are your allies, and let the people who are not go their own way.
Go ahead.
Shortly after Stonewall, and if you don't know what Stonewall was, it was in the late 60s. It was a riot at a gay bar in the Village in New York, and it is accepted as being what started the gay rights movement that turned into the GLBTA movement that's inclusive for all of us. There was a swelling movement in the 70s and into the early 80s that gay lesbian people just evacuated rural areas and went to large cities, and slowly we've come back to the farm. I was raised on a farm. I know how to drive a tractor. I know how to milk a cow.